"Are you lost too, mister?" The innocent question from a 5-year-old boy stopped the most feared mafia boss in New York, dead in his tracks in a dark alley. What he did next changed everything. Christmas Eve. Snow fell thick and silent over lower Manhattan, muffling the distant hum of holiday traffic. The city glittered with lights. Families rushed home with shopping bags and laughter, but in the narrow alley behind Mulberry Street, there was only shadow and stillness. Dominic Corsetti stood alone against the brick wall, a cigarette burning between his fingers. His breath curled white in the frozen air. He had just finished a meeting, the kind that left no witnesses and fewer questions. Blood still stained the edge of his sleeve, hidden beneath his black cashmere coat. 3-piece suit, hand-stitched in Milan, silver cufflinks catching the faint glow of a distant street lamp, shoes polished to a mirror shine despite the snow. He was the image of power, of control, of a man who answered to no one. But inside his coat pocket, his fingers traced something that didn't belong to his world. A small silver bracelet, too delicate for a grown man. Its tiny charm shaped like a butterfly. The clasp was broken. It had been broken for 15 years since the night they found it, clutched in his sister's empty bed. Sophia, 6 years old, taken on Christmas Eve, never came home. His gray eyes stared at nothing. Not the snow, not the shadows. Somewhere far away 15 years ago, maybe further. To a door he couldn't open in time, to a scream he still heard in his sleep. Then footsteps. Fast, frantic, the sound of someone running for their life. Dominic didn't move, didn't reach for the gun at his hip. He simply watched as 2 figures stumbled into the alley, a young woman, barely more than a girl herself, dragging a small boy by the hand. Her brown hair was wild, lips cracked from the cold, eyes red but tearless. Her coat was too thin for winter. The boy clutched a worn stuffed dinosaur to his chest, his cheeks flushed pink, his breath coming in frightened little clouds. The woman saw Dominic and froze. Her arms wrapped around the boy instantly, pulling him behind her. Fear raw and absolute filled her eyes. She knew what men like him looked like. She had married one. But the boy slipped free. He walked toward Dominic with small, steady steps. No fear, no hesitation. He stopped right in front of the towering figure in black, tilting his head up with wide, round eyes full of something Dominic hadn't seen directed at him in 15 years. Trust. "Are you lost too, mister?" the boy asked softly. "Me and Sissy are lost. We're looking for a safe place." He paused, clutching his dinosaur tighter. "Maybe we can find the way together?" Dominic's cigarette slipped from his fingers, hissing as it hit the snow. He opened his mouth to say, "I'm not lost, kid," but the words wouldn't come, because looking into those innocent eyes, he realized the boy was right. He had been lost for 15 years. Lost in blood, lost in vengeance, lost in a grief so deep he had forgotten there was ever a way out. The woman pulled the boy back, trembling. "Noah, don't." But Noah kept his eyes on Dominic, waiting, believing. And for the first time in 15 years, the most dangerous man in New York didn't know what to say. Perhaps he was the monster everyone said he was. Perhaps his hands were too blood-stained to ever touch something pure again. But this boy looked at him like he could still be saved, and that was more terrifying than any enemy he had ever faced. If this story satisfies your soul, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt stories to life. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a moment. That moment of silence did not last long. The roar of an engine tore through the stillness of the alley, echoing off weathered brick walls like the growl of a predator on the hunt. Headlights swept across the dark and struck 3 figures standing in the middle of the lane, turning them into stark silhouettes against the white of the falling snow. Lily spun around and, in an instant, all the color drained from her face. She recognized that car, she recognized that engine, and she knew who was sitting inside. The door opened. A man stepped out, followed by 2 large men with faces as cold and blank as stone statues. The man in front stood about 5'11", blonde hair slicked neatly back, a sharp, angular face with features so perfect he could have been on a magazine cover. Ryan Mercer, 32 years old, handsome in the kind of way that makes women look twice and men feel a sting of envy. But that beauty was only a shell for something rotten underneath. His blue eyes were as cold as a snake's, without a trace of warmth or feeling, only calculation and control. He wore an expensive wool coat and polished leather shoes, each step steady, as if the whole world belonged to him. He moved toward Lily with a smile that never reached his eyes. The same smile she had seen 1,000 times before every beating. "Lily, Lily, Lily," he said, shaking his head, his voice sweet in a false scolding way, as if speaking to a misbehaving child. "You thought you could run? It's been 3 months. You've worn me out." He stopped a few steps from her and brushed snow from his shoulder. "You and that little boy belong to me. You know that. Why do you have to make this hard for both of us?" Lily took a step back and pulled Noah behind her. Her body trembled, not only from the cold but from the fear that had sunk into her bones over 5 years. But this time she did not bow her head. This time she had something to protect, something more important than her own life. "I don't belong to you," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "I never belonged to you, and Noah doesn't either." Ryan tilted his head, his gaze darkening. He did not like being talked back to, he never had. "What are you saying, sweetheart?" His voice stayed sugary, but something dangerous simmered beneath it. "You know what happens when you don't obey." The 2 men behind him stepped forward and blocked the way out of the alley. There was no way to run, nowhere to hide. Lily swallowed hard, yet she held her ground, arms spread wide to shield Noah. "I'd rather die," she said, each word steady as an oath, "than let you lay a hand on my brother." Ryan's face changed. The sweet mask fell away, revealing the cruelty underneath. He moved in, fast and decisive. "You want to die? I can arrange that." Noah began to cry, a small, desperate sound in the frozen winter night. He clung to his sister's leg, face pressed into the thin fabric of her coat, the stuffed dinosaur trapped between them. "Sis! Sis!" he sobbed. Lily felt her heart splinter at the sound. She had promised to protect him. She had promised to get him somewhere safe. But now, standing in a dark alley on Christmas night, she did not know how she could keep that promise. Ryan stopped right in front of her. He looked down at her with contempt, as if she were an insect he could crush whenever he pleased. Then he lifted his hand. Lily knew that motion. She had seen it hundreds of times. She knew what was coming next. She closed her eyes, pulled Noah tight against her, and braced herself for the familiar pain. But the slap never came. A hand emerged from the darkness and closed around Ryan's wrist just before it could reach Lily's face. Strong and unyielding, fingers clamped tight like steel tongs. Ryan jerked around, startled, and his eyes met the icy stare of Dominic Corsetti. The Mafia boss stood there, tall and terrifying in a black suit, his face utterly unreadable, yet his gray eyes burned with something dangerous. "She said no," Dominic said, his voice cold as ice in the heart of winter. "Are you deaf?" Ryan tried to wrench free but could not. He looked more closely at the man in front of him, and slowly recognition rose in his eyes. The blood seemed to freeze in his face. He knew this man. Who in New York's underworld did not know Dominic Corsetti, the head of the Corsetti family, the man who held half the city in his hands, the one people whispered had killed his first man at 16 years old and never stopped after that? Mr. Corsetti," Ryan stammered, all the arrogance from a moment ago draining out of his voice. "I didn't know. This is family business. She's my wife." "Ex-wife," Lily whispered from behind, her voice trembling, but she forced the words out anyway. Dominic did not look at her. He kept Ryan's wrist in his grip and slowly squeezed harder until a groan broke from Ryan's throat. Ryan's 2 men started to reach inside their coats where their guns were hidden, but before their fingers could touch a grip, they froze in place. From the shadows behind Dominic, 3 figures stepped forward. Marco Benedetti led them, Dominic's most trusted bodyguard, a 42-year-old man with a scarred face and eyes that had seen far too much death. Beside him were 2 more men, each aiming a gun straight at the head of one of Ryan's enforcers. "You 2 should keep your hands where they are," Marco said, as casually as if he were commenting on the weather, "unless you want to lose them." The 2 men slowly pulled their hands away from their coats and raised them in surrender. Dominic released Ryan's wrist and shoved him back. Ryan stumbled, rubbing the red mark already forming. Fear was plain in his eyes, yet his ego and pride were not dead enough to stay down. "You don't know who she is," he tried to recover his tone. "She's a—" "10 seconds, Dominic cut in, his voice flat without heat. "You have 10 seconds to get out of here. Next time I see your face, you won't have a face left to see." Ryan swallowed. He looked at Dominic, at Marco, at the guns trained on his men. Then he looked at Lily, his eyes full of hatred and a promise of revenge. "This isn't over," he snarled. "You'll pay for this, Lily. I swear it." Then he turned and hurried to the car, his 2 men scrambling after him. The door slammed, the engine roared, and the vehicle tore away into the snowy night, leaving the alley to its silence again. Lily stood there for 1 second, 2, and then her legs would not hold her anymore. She dropped to her knees in the cold snow, pulled Noah into her arms, and began to cry. The tears she had held back for 3 months finally spilled over, burning hot against her freezing cheeks. Noah clung to her, but his eyes lifted to Dominic. There was no fear, no doubt, only a pure trust so absolute it felt to Dominic like a fist driving into his chest. "I knew it," Noah said softly, his voice still thick with tears but steady. "You're not a bad man. I knew it." Dominic stood perfectly still. He had heard countless pleas, threats, and flattery in his life, but he had never heard anyone speak to him like that. No one had ever looked at him with eyes so clear and believed he was not a monster. He did not know how to respond. He did not know what to say. He only stood there, in falling snow and darkness, staring at a 5-year-old boy clutching a stuffed dinosaur and believing something Dominic himself no longer believed. Marco stepped up beside him, waiting for an order. A long time passed before Dominic finally spoke, his voice low and rough. "Take them home. Tonight they stay." The black car glided smoothly through Manhattan's night streets, its tires giving a soft, gritty hiss as they rolled over fresh snow. Inside, Lily curled into the far corner of the back seat, holding Noah tight against her chest, as if someone might snatch him from her arms at any second. She did not know where they were being taken. She did not know what that terrifying man wanted from her. She only knew she had just slipped free of one devil's claws, and now she might be walking straight into the lair of another. Noah had stopped crying, his head resting against his sister's chest, eyelids heavy with exhaustion though he fought to stay awake. The stuffed dinosaur, Rex, lay snug in his arms, its velvet fur worn thin and dirty after 3 months on the run. Marco sat up front beside the driver. He said nothing during the ride, but now and then he studied Lily in the rearview mirror with an expression she could not read. When the car stopped in front of a high rise on the Upper East Side, Lily felt her heart quicken. This was a neighborhood of wealth and power, the kind of place she had never imagined she would set foot in. Marco opened the door and motioned for her to follow. They stepped into the lobby, past security guards who bowed to Marco with unmistakable deference, and entered a private elevator. When the doors slid open at the top floor, Lily walked into a completely different world. The penthouse was vast, with soaring ceilings and walls of glass that framed the city in a glittering sweep of lights. The decor was minimalist but unmistakably expensive, everything in shades of black, gray, and white. A black leather sofa, a glass table, bookshelves of dark oak. Everything was flawless, everything costly, yet something about it made Lily feel cold all the way to the bone. There were no family photos, not a single picture on the walls or shelves. There was no Christmas tree, no twinkling lights, no wreath, no sign at all that this was Christmas Eve. The apartment was as beautiful as a magazine spread, and as empty as a grave. Noah, unlike his sister, seemed to wake up the moment he saw the new space. He slipped from Lily's arms and started to run, exploring, eyes wide with curiosity. "Whoa, this place is huge," he cried, racing to the glass and pressing his face to it as he stared out. "Lily, look, I can see the whole city. Why doesn't his house have a tree? It's Christmas. Doesn't he like Christmas?" Lily started to pull Noah back, but Marco spoke first. "Let the boy be," he said, his voice low, not as cold as she expected. "No one will hurt him here." Lily turned to Marco, her eyes still sharp with caution. "Why?" she asked, her throat raw. "Why did he help us? What does he want?" Marco was silent for a moment, as if weighing how much to say. Then he answered in an even tone. "The boss doesn't harm women and children. That's a rule. It has always been a rule." He pointed down the hallway. "Your room and the boys are at the end. There are clean clothes and whatever you need. Get some rest." Then he turned and walked away, leaving Lily standing alone in the middle of the enormous, hollow living room. She looked around at the bare walls, the cold perfection of everything, and she wondered if that man lived alone inside this beautiful, frozen shell, with no photographs, no warmth of family, nothing but wealth and loneliness. She did not know that in another room of the penthouse, Dominic sat in the dark, watching her through the security camera feed. He saw Noah running, pressing his face to the glass, asking question after question that no one answered. He saw Lily sink onto the sofa in exhaustion, draw Noah back into her arms, and stroke the boy's hair with a tenderness he had forgotten could exist. He did not understand why he had saved them. He did not understand why he had brought them here. He could have walked away. It was not his business. But the boy's eyes, that innocent question, had touched something he believed had died 15 years ago. Dominic turned off the screen, and the room fell into darkness. He leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and tried to drive away the chaotic thoughts in his head. But the image of a little boy clutching a stuffed dinosaur, eyes clear and bright, faith unconditional, haunted him all night long. The first light of Christmas morning slipped through the heavy curtains, laying pale golden streaks across the dark wood floor of the penthouse. Dominic had been awake for a long time. In truth, he had barely slept at all. He was already in his suit, straightening his tie in the mirror, preparing to leave before those uninvited guests woke up. He did not want to face them. He did not want to explain. He did not want to look into that little boy's clear eyes one more time. He stepped out of his room and moved down the hallway toward the front door, but as he passed the dining room, he stopped. Noah was sitting at the dining table, alone. The chair was too tall for him, his legs swinging without touching the floor, the stuffed dinosaur Rex placed neatly beside a plate of bread someone had set out. Maybe the housekeeper, maybe Marco. The boy saw Dominic and his face lit up. "Mr." Noah called, waving. "You're up." "I've been up for a long time. Lily is still asleep. She's really tired." Dominic stood there, neither moving forward nor back. He should have nodded and kept walking. He had a meeting, responsibilities, an empire to run. He did not have time for a 5-year-old child. But Noah went on, his voice softer. "Do you eat breakfast all by yourself?" Dominic did not answer. Noah tilted his head, big eyes fixed on him with something that looked like pity. "That's sad. Lily says eating alone makes the food taste not good anymore. She always eats with me, even when we only have a little piece of bread." That innocent sentence hit Dominic like a punch to the chest. How many years had he eaten alone? He could not remember. Maybe since his parents died. Maybe even before that, when the house had turned cold after the day Sophia disappeared. He meant to turn and leave, but Noah slid down from his chair, ran to him, and pulled out the chair beside his. The boy patted the seat and looked up at Dominic with a wide grin. "Sit here, mister. I'll tell you stories about Rex. Rex has lots of adventures." Dominic looked down at the child, at the chair, then toward the door. He could leave. He should leave. But his legs would not obey. And then, without understanding why, he sat down. Noah whooped with delight, climbed back onto his own chair, and began to chatter. He told Dominic about Rex, about how he had found the dinosaur in a second-hand shop when he was 3 years old, about how Rex had gone everywhere with him. He talked about Lily, about how she always sang to him every night even though her voice was not very good, about how she always gave him the bigger portion of food. He talked about the places they had hidden, the nights they slept in a trailer, the meals that were nothing but crackers and water. The boy's voice was bright as a bell, without a trace of bitterness or complaint, only the innocence of a child who had not yet been taught by life what hatred is. Dominic listened, truly listened. For the first time in many years, he sat still and let someone talk to him about something that was not business, not money, not power, not death. Soft footsteps sounded in the hallway. Lily appeared in the doorway of the dining room, her hair still a mess, her eyes swollen from crying the night before. She froze at the sight in front of her. Dominic Corsetti, the most feared Mafia boss in New York, sitting at the table with her little brother, listening as the boy told stories about a stuffed dinosaur. "Lily," Noah waved. "You're up. Come eat breakfast with me and Mr. Dominic." Lily looked at Dominic, suspicion and questions filling her gaze. Dominic did not look at her. He only gave a slight nod toward the empty chair. She hesitated, then slowly sat down. Breakfast went on in silence, broken only by Noah's sparrow-bright chatter. No one said much, yet the quiet was not as heavy as Lily had expected. It was simply the silence of people who did not yet know what to say to one another. Dominic watched Noah as he spoke, watched the clumsy way he held his chopsticks, watched him giggle when he reached the part where Rex fought a stray cat, and for the first time in 15 years, when he thought of Sophia, he did not feel like he was suffocating. He still hurt, he still missed her, but the pain did not crush his throat the way it always did. Noah suddenly stopped mid-story and looked at Dominic with wide eyes. "Do you like me?" The question was simple, as if he were asking about the weather. Dominic did not answer. He did not know how to answer, but he did not stand up and leave. After breakfast, Marco appeared and told Lily that the boss wanted to see her in his office. His tone was even, without a hint of threat, but Lily still felt her chest tighten. She glanced at Noah on the sofa, Rex in his arms, cartoons playing on the large television, then followed Marco down the long hallway. Dominic's office was at the end of the apartment, behind a heavy oak door. When she stepped inside, Lily found a spacious room with bookshelves that rose to the ceiling, a glossy black walnut desk, and dark, abstract paintings hanging on the walls. Dominic stood by the window with his back to her, staring out at a city blanketed in white snow. He did not turn when she entered, only spoke in a low, cold voice. Sit. Lily lowered herself into the chair across from the desk, hands on her lap. Forcing herself to control the trembling, she waited. After a while, Dominic finally turned and walked over to sit in the black leather chair behind the desk. His gray eyes fixed on her, sharp and penetrating, as if he were trying to read every thought in her head. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice flat. "Who is he? What do you owe him?" The questions were short and direct, leaving no room for evasion. Lily swallowed and searched for her voice. She knew she had to answer. She owed this man at least the truth, after everything he had done for her last night. "My name is Lily Hartwell," she began, her voice raw. "I'm 27. Noah is my little brother, my half-brother on my father's side. He's 5. She paused and took a deep breath before she went on. "My parents died in a car accident when I was 12. They were on their way to pick me up from school when a truck lost control and drove straight into them. They died at the scene." She did not cry as she said it. She had cried too much, and she had been out of tears for a long time. "After that, I was sent to an orphanage. I aged out of the system and started working. But 5 years ago, my father, the man I never knew had another life, died of an illness. Noah's mother abandoned him. He was just a baby, leaving me as his only living relative. I took him in because I was the only person he had." Dominic sat motionless, his face giving nothing away. But Lily noticed his hand tightening on the arm of the chair, his knuckles gone white. "When I was 22, I met Ryan," she continued, and bitterness crept into her voice. "He was handsome, rich, he said sweet things. He promised to give me and Noah a family, a new life. I was naive enough to believe him. I thought he was my salvation." She let out a small, humorless laugh. "He turned out to be hell. Right after we got married, he changed. The first time he hit me was because I came home 15 minutes late. He said it was my fault, that I made him do it. And I believed him. I believed it was my fault." Lily looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting together until they hurt. 5 years I lived in that hell. He hit me, he tore me down, he cut me off from everyone. He said no one wanted me but him, that I was useless, that I was lucky he even kept me, and I believed him. I believed it so completely I forgot who I was." She lifted her head and looked straight into Dominic's eyes. "But then he started hitting Noah. My little brother, the only child I have in this world. The first time he slapped Noah, I knew I had to run. I could endure anything, but I couldn't let him hurt Noah." Her voice shook. "I've been running for 3 months. 3 months living in fear, never staying anywhere more than 2 nights, never trusting anyone. But he always found me. Always. He has money, connections, everything. And I have nothing but my bare hands and a little brother I have to protect." She stopped, falling silent for a long moment. Then she asked, her voice barely more than breath, "Why did you help me? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Why?" Dominic did not answer right away. He sat there, gray eyes on her, yet it was as if he were looking at somewhere very far away, somewhere in a past he could never touch again. The silence stretched so long, Lily thought he would not answer at all. Then, finally, he spoke. His voice was low and rough, as if every word had to force its way through a wall of pain to get out. "Because someone once didn't help my sister." Just one sentence, no explanation, no details. But Lily saw something in his eyes, an abyss of suffering she did not dare to stare into for too long. Dominic stood, turned his back to her, and walked to the door. He did not say another word. The door closed, leaving Lily alone in the cold room, with an unanswered question and the haunting image of gray eyes full of grief lodged in her mind. 3 days passed in the penthouse, 3 days in which Lily slowly learned how to breathe without constantly looking over her shoulder, without flinching at every sound. She was still cautious, still not fully trusting, but at least she and Noah were safe, well-fed, sleeping in warm beds, and that was already far more than she had dared to hope for. Noah was different. He treated the penthouse like a gigantic castle waiting to be explored. Every day he discovered a new corner, a new room, a new curiosity. He raced through the place with Rex in his hand, firing off endless silly questions at Marco, and the scarred man never truly answered, yet he never shooed the boy away either. Dominic rarely appeared. He left early in the morning and came back very late, sometimes not coming home at all. When he was there, he shut himself in his office, or sat alone on the balcony in the dark. He did not avoid them, but he did not seek them out, either, as if he did not know what to do with their presence in a space he had lived in alone for far too long. But there was one place Noah was never allowed to enter. At the end of the east hallway was a door that always stayed closed. Unlike the other doors in the penthouse, this one looked older, its brass handle dulled by time. Noah had asked Marco about that room, but the man only shook his head and told him he should not go in there, which only made Noah more curious. Today, on the third day, Noah was playing hide-and-seek by himself in the hallway when he noticed that door sitting slightly ajar, only a narrow crack, but enough for him to see a dim light inside. The cleaner must have forgotten to lock it. Noah stood in front of it with Rex in his hand, hesitating. Lily always taught him not to enter someone else's room without permission, but he only wanted to peek, just a little, just for a moment. He pushed the door and stepped inside, and immediately it felt like he had walked into another world. The room was small, filled with faint light from a window covered by closed curtains, but unlike the rest of the penthouse, cold and minimalist, this place was warm with pastel pink and white. A small bed sat in the corner, white sheets printed with butterflies in every color. On a shelf, dolls stood in neat rows, their hair still glossy as if it had just been brushed. Fairy tale books were stacked on a little desk, their covers showing princesses and castles. And on the pillow sat a white teddy bear, its black glass eyes fixed toward the door as if waiting for someone to come home. The room felt frozen in time. There was no dust, everything clean and orderly, yet it was clear no one had lived here for a very, very long time. Noah walked closer to the bed, eyes wide as he stared at the teddy bear. It was so beautiful, snowy white and soft, much bigger than his Rex. He set Rex down on the bed, reached out, and lifted the bear, hugging it to his chest. "Hello," he whispered to it. "What's your name? Are you lonely? Being alone is really sad." He did not hear the footsteps behind him. "What are you doing in here?" The cold voice made Noah jump. He spun around, and his heart seemed to stop when he saw Dominic in the doorway. The man's face no longer held its usual cool distance, but something far more frightening. His gray eyes had darkened like a sky before a storm, his jaw clenched, his whole body pulled tight like a wire about to snap. I'm sorry," Noah stammered, tears already rising. "I didn't know. The door was open. I just wanted to look." The voices and Noah's crying brought Lily running. She appeared at the door, took in the scene, and her protective instinct surged to the surface. She rushed into the room, dropped to her knees, and pulled Noah into her arms, using her body to shield him the way she had done 1,000 times with Ryan. "Please," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "He's just a child. He didn't know. Please don't." She did not even know what she was begging for. "Don't hit him. Don't throw them out. Don't look at them with eyes so full of pain." Dominic stood motionless for a long time, his gaze locked on the teddy bear in Noah's hands. Then he did something neither Lily nor Noah expected. He stepped forward, but not in rage. He sank down, slowly, carefully, until his eyes were level with Noah's. His hand trembled as it reached out and gently took the bear from the boy's grasp. He held it to his chest, and Lily saw something she had never imagined she would see in this man. Pain, pure and brutal. Dominic held the teddy bear against his chest, his fingers gripping so hard his knuckles turned white. He did not look at Lily, did not look at Noah, only stared into the bear's glossy black glass eyes as if he were staring at someone he had lost long ago. When he spoke, his voice shook, and for the first time Lily heard the fracture in the voice of a man who had always seemed incapable of feeling. "This was Sophia's," he said, each word sounding as if it had to force its way past a stone lodged in his throat. "My sister." Noah stopped crying, wide eyes fixed on Dominic. Lily froze too, arms still around Noah, unable to move. She remembered what he had said in the office, the sentence he had dropped before walking away without explanation, because someone once didn't help my sister. Now she understood. Dominic remained kneeling there, eyes on the teddy bear, yet it was as if he were looking at someplace far away, at a Christmas night 15 years earlier. "Sophia was 6, he began, his voice low and even, like he was reading out a death sentence for himself. "She liked pink. She liked butterflies. She liked fairy tales about princesses and princes. She believed magic was real, that Santa Claus brought gifts to good children." He paused and drew a shaky breath. "That Christmas Eve, I was 17. My parents went to a party and said they'd be home before midnight. I stayed to watch Sophia. She wanted to stay up and wait for Santa, but I made her go to sleep. I told her Santa only came when she was asleep. That was the last time I ever spoke to her." Lily felt her heart tighten at those words. She wanted to say something, anything, but she did not dare open her mouth, afraid she would break this fragile moment. I was in the living room when I heard her screaming, Dominic went on, his voice trembling harder now. I ran upstairs, but I was too late. Her bedroom window was wide open. The bed was empty. All that was left was the silver bracelet she wore, lying on the floor. The clasp snapped. His hand went into his coat pocket and came out with a small silver bracelet, a butterfly charm dangling from it, something he always kept on him. They never found her. The police searched for months. No trace, no ransom demand, nothing. Sophia vanished as if she had never existed. Alive or dead, I don't know. It's been 15 years, and I still don't know. He looked up, and his gray eyes were no longer cold, only full of pain. My parents collapsed after that. My mother drank herself to death. My father became cruel and hard, and he built this empire out of blood and tears so he would never be powerless again. And me, I grew up inside guilt, inside self-hatred, because I didn't protect my little sister. He looked around the room, at the dolls, the stacks of fairy tales, the small bed with butterfly sheets. I kept this room exactly the same, 15 years, because if I changed even one thing, it would mean I accepted she was never coming back, and I can't do that. He lowered his head, his shoulders trembling faintly. I built an empire. I have power, money, an army under my command, but I still couldn't save the people I loved. I couldn't save Sophia. I couldn't save my mother. I couldn't save anyone. Silence settled over the room. Lily did not know what to say. There were no words large enough to soften a pain that old. But Noah was different. The boy gently peeled Lily's hands away, stood up, and walked over to Dominic. No fear, no hesitation. With his small arms, he hugged Dominic around the neck, his head resting against the shoulder of a man coming apart. "I'm sorry about Sophia," Noah whispered, his voice clear and sincere. "I bet she was really sweet, and I bet she loved you a lot." The boy held on tighter. "Do you want me to be your little brother? I can't replace Sophia, but I can be here, so you won't be lonely anymore." Dominic went rigid in the child's embrace. He did not cry. He had not cried in 15 years. His tears had dried up long ago. But when a 5-year-old boy with a stuffed dinosaur and a pure, unguarded heart held him, something inside him broke. Not in a destroying way, but in the kind of breaking that lets the light get in. Slowly, Dominic set the teddy bear down on the floor and lifted his arms to hold Noah back. For the first time in 15 years, he let someone touch that wound, and he did not push them away. A week passed after that day in Sophia's room, a week in which everything in the penthouse began to change in small but unmistakable ways. The apartment was still luxurious and minimalist as before, but it no longer felt cold like a museum. Noah's laughter echoed down the halls. The smell of cooking drifted from the kitchen. The warmth of life was slowly threading itself into every corner. Noah, with a child's fearlessness and simple innocence, had appointed himself the task of pulling Dominic out of his frozen shell. He did not accept rejection, did not understand distance, and he never gave up. One afternoon he found a chess set in Dominic's office and demanded to learn. Dominic sat down and taught him how each piece moved, explaining the rules with a patience that surprised even him. Noah learned quickly, and he cheated just as quickly. He would sneak the knight forward when Dominic was not looking, or pretend to forget that pawns could not move backward. Dominic saw it all, but he pretended not to, and when Noah shouted in triumph, eyes bright as if they held the whole sky, Dominic realized he did not want to break that joy. In the evenings, Noah wanted cartoons. He dragged Dominic onto the sofa, shoved Rex into the hands of the most feared mafia boss in New York, and put on a movie about talking dinosaurs. Dominic sat stiff as a statue, watching the screen with an expression no one could read. He did not understand why the dinosaurs sang and danced. He did not understand what the story was supposed to be about, but he did not stand up and leave. He stayed through the entire film, letting Noah lean against his arm, occasionally explaining the plot with a seriousness that was almost funny. And every night before bed, Noah demanded a story. The first time, Lily started to get up to do it, but Noah shook his head. "I want Mr. Dominic to tell it." Dominic stood in the doorway, caught off guard by the request. He did not know how to tell stories. He could not remember the last time he had read a children's book, but then he sat down beside Noah's bed and began to speak. Not stories from a book, but the stories Sophia used to love. A story about a little princess and a magical butterfly. A story about a fallen star that came to Earth and became a girl with wings. Stories he had told Sophia every night before she disappeared. Stories he had not told anyone in 15 years. 15 years in which they had been nothing but painful memories locked in the darkest corner of his mind. Yet now, As he told them to Noah, he felt the pain sharpen less, as if those stories had finally found somewhere to go, an ear willing to hold them. Lily watched it all from a distance. She saw the change in Dominic, small but impossible to deny. He was more patient, frowned less, and sometimes he even smiled when Noah said something ridiculous. The smile was slight, only the faintest lift at the corner of his mouth, but it was real, and he came home earlier. Before, he vanished all day. Now, he tried to be back before dinner. Lily changed too. She stopped hiding in the bedroom and began to venture out, exploring the huge kitchen that had barely been used. She discovered the refrigerator held only water and alcohol, that Dominic either ordered food or simply did not eat at all, and it bothered her in a way she could not explain. She began to cook. Simple meals she had learned in the orphanage, meals Noah loved, and every evening the three of them sat at the table together. They did not talk much, but the silence was no longer heavy. It was warm and easy, as if they had grown used to the shape of one another's presence. Marco noticed the change. One night, as Dominic stood on the balcony smoking, the bodyguard stepped beside him. "You've changed, boss," Marco said, his voice even, with something quietly warm beneath it. Dominic did not deny it. He only stared out at the city glittering below and said nothing. That night, when Lily woke to get a glass of water, she saw Dominic's silhouette sitting alone on the balcony. He was not smoking, only sitting in the dark, looking out into the endless space. She did not go close. She did not know what to say to him. But she made a cup of hot tea and gently set it on the small table beside him. She did not wait for him to turn, did not wait for thanks. She simply turned back inside in silence. But before she could walk away, she heard his voice, soft as wind. "Thank you." Just 2 words, but it was the first time he had ever thanked her. That night, Dominic could not sleep. He lay on his bed with his eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, his mind spinning with thoughts he could not push away. Around 2 in the morning, when the entire penthouse had sunk into silence, he heard a sound, crying, small and strangled, as if someone were trying to hold it in and simply could not. It was coming from Lily's room. Dominic sat up, set his feet on the cold floor, then stopped. This was not his problem. She was an adult. She could handle her own pain. He should not interfere, should not let himself become tangled any deeper in the lives of the two of them. He had given them a place to stay, given them protection. That was enough. He meant to lie back down, but the crying kept coming, so raw and desperate it slipped through the walls and lodged straight in his chest. This was not ordinary crying. It was the crying of someone who had endured too much, who had held herself together for too long, and who had finally reached the point where she could not hold on anymore. Before he could think, Dominic found himself standing outside Lily's door. He hesitated for a second, then knocked lightly. The crying stopped at once. A moment later, the door opened. Lily stood there with her hair in disarray, her eyes swollen and red. She wore thin pajamas, her whole body trembling as if she had just been dragged through a terrible nightmare. When she saw Dominic, she lifted a hand to wipe her tears, trying to hide her weakness. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice rough. "Did I wake you?" "I didn't mean to." Dominic did not answer that. He only asked, short and blunt, "A nightmare?" Lily nodded, lips pressed tight. She did not want to talk about it. She did not want anyone to see her like this, fragile and broken. But Dominic did not leave. He stepped into the room, pulled the chair by the window closer to the bed, and sat down. He kept his distance, not coming too close, but he stayed. "Tell me," he said, his voice low and steady, "if you want to." Lily stood there for a moment, then slowly sat on the edge of the bed. She stared down at her hands, fingers clenched in the sheet, and then she began to speak, her voice barely more than breath. "I dreamed about him. Ryan. I dreamed about the times he hit me." She pushed up her sleeve, revealing faint scars along her arm. "He always hit places my clothes could cover, so no one would see, so I'd have no proof." Dominic looked at the scars, his jaw tightening, but he said nothing, only listened. "He told me I was useless," Lily went on, her voice shaking. "He said no one wanted me but him, that I should be grateful he still bothered to keep me, that if I left I'd die in the street like a dog." Tears slid down her cheeks, and she did not wipe them away. "And I believed him. For 5 years I believed everything he said. I thought I really was worthless. I thought I deserved to be treated that way. I thought it was love, that he hit me because he loved me." A bitter laugh broke from her. "Stupid, right? I was so stupid." Dominic was silent for a long time. Then he spoke, his voice low and certain. "You're not worthless. Lily looked up at him, eyes swimming with tears and doubt. "You're not worthless," he repeated. "The one who made you think that is garbage. He didn't hit you because you did something wrong. He hit you because he's a coward, and hurting someone weaker is the only way he can feel powerful." Lily stared at him without speaking. She was not used to anyone talking to her like this, not used to anyone being on her side. Dominic looked out the window, where the city lights glittered in the dark. "I understand guilt," he said, his voice dropping. "For 15 years I've asked myself, what if I ran a little faster? What if I didn't make Sophia go to sleep? What if I stayed in her room that night instead of sitting in the living room? 15 years I've blamed myself for not protecting my sister." He turned back to Lily. "I know what it's like to live with the feeling that you're the one at fault. It eats you from the inside, day after day." Lily shook her head, her voice suddenly gentle. "That wasn't your fault. You were just a 12-year-old kid. You couldn't fight evil. You did everything you could." Dominic looked at her, and something shifted in his gray eyes. Then he said, his voice low like a sigh, "You too. What happened to you wasn't your fault. You did what you had to do to survive. You protected Noah. That isn't useless. That's brave." After that they sat in silence. Neither of them said another word. But the silence was not heavy, not uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who had seen each other's darkness and did not turn away. Outside the window, the sky slowly changed from black to gray, then to a faint blush as dawn arrived. The first light of the new day reached into the room and fell across two figures still there, one on the bed, one in the chair. For the first time in many years, Dominic did not feel alone in the night, and for the first time since she had run, Lily did not feel afraid with someone close by. On the 23rd of December that morning, Noah was sitting by the window looking out over the city when he suddenly turned to Dominic with a question no one expected. "Mister, why doesn't your house have a Christmas tree?" Dominic was drinking coffee and nearly spilled the cup. He went still, his hand suspended in midair, gray eyes flashing with something painful before he shut it away. He did not decorate for Christmas, not last year, not the year before, but since 15 years ago, since the night Sophia vanished. Christmas was no longer a holiday of joy and togetherness for him. It was a reminder of loss, of failure, of a little sister he had not protected. He had erased every sign of Christmas from his life, as if doing so could help him forget the pain, but he never forgot. "I don't like Christmas," he answered shortly, hoping Noah would not ask more. But a 5-year-old with a pure heart did not give up so easily. Noah tilted his head, thinking with those wide eyes, and then he said something that hit Dominic like a fist to the chest. "Sophia would be really sad. She's up in heaven looking down, and she won't see any tree to know Christmas came. She'll think you forgot her." Lily stood in the kitchen and caught her breath at those words. She looked at Dominic and saw his face change, not with anger, not with coldness, but with something breaking, like a wall that had stood for 15 years suddenly cracking apart. Dominic said nothing. He set the coffee down, stood up, and walked into his office, closing the door behind him. Lily thought he would stay there all day like he always did, but she was wrong. That afternoon, while Lily was teaching Noah to draw in the living room, the elevator doors opened. 2 men stepped in carrying an enormous Christmas tree, nearly tall enough to touch the ceiling. Behind them came Marco, with several boxes of colorful decorations in his arms. Noah leapt to his feet, eyes bright as if 1,000 stars had lit inside them. "A tree! Lily, a tree!" he shouted, running to it and bouncing around with joy he could not contain. Dominic stepped out of his office and stood in the corner, watching with a face no one could read. He did not know what to do. It had been too long since the last time he had stood in front of a Christmas tree. Too long since he had allowed anything belonging to this holiday to enter his life. Noah began to decorate, tiny hands reaching up to hang red and gold ornaments. Lily helped, lifting him so he could place decorations on the higher branches. Noah's laughter filled the penthouse, driving away the chill that had ruled the place for too long. When they were nearly finished, Noah looked up at the top of the tree, where there was still an empty spot for the star. He ran to Dominic, grabbed his hand and tugged. "You hang the star. You're the tallest. Lily and I can't reach." Dominic looked down at the small hand holding his, then at the glittering gold star Marco was holding. He hesitated for a second, then stepped forward. He took the star, reached up, and set it on the top of the tree, for the first time in 15 years. When the star slid into place, Noah whooped and ran to turn on the lights. The tree flared to life, hundreds of tiny bulbs sparkling like stars fallen to earth. The penthouse that had been so cold suddenly felt warm and bright. That night the 3 of them sat on the sofa, watching the lit tree in silence. Noah sat in the middle, leaning against Lily on one side and Dominic on the other, Rex tucked safely in his lap. "Isn't it pretty?" Noah asked sleepily. "Can Sophia see it?" Dominic stared at the tree, at the star on top, and in his mind he could almost see Sophia standing there, eyes shining the way they used to every Christmas. "She can definitely see it," he said, his voice rough. "She sees everything." Lily looked at Dominic under the soft shimmer of Christmas lights, and she saw a different man, not the cold, frightening mafia boss, not the one who held life and death in his hands, only a brother missing his sister, trying to heal a wound that had festered for 15 years. And in that moment she realized her heart was beating to a different rhythm. On Christmas morning, Noah woke up while it still was not fully light outside. He hopped out of bed, hugged Rex, ran into the living room, and stopped in front of the tree with eyes shining bright. Under the branches, sometime during the night, there were boxes wrapped in paper of every color. Noah whooped with delight and sprinted to Lily's room, tugging her awake. "Lily, wake up, wake up! There are presents." Santa came. Lily opened her eyes, still sleepy, but she could not resist her little brother's excitement. She let Noah pull her into the living room, and when she got there, she saw Dominic already standing by the tree. He wore a black shirt, no suit, no tie, looking less cold than usual, as if Noah had dragged him out of bed too. The three of them sat down in front of the tree. Noah stared at the gifts, barely containing himself, yet he did not dare open anything without permission. Dominic nodded, and the boy immediately tore into the wrapping paper. The first gift Noah opened was a new stuffed dinosaur. Not the cheap kind from an ordinary toy store, but an expensive handmade one, with plush fur and bright glass eyes. It was twice as big as Rex, far prettier than Rex in every way. Noah hugged the new dinosaur, eyes blazing. "Whoa, it's so beautiful," he cried, and then he set the new dinosaur down, reached for old, worn Rex beside him, and pulled Rex tight against his chest. "Thank you, Mr. Dominic," Noah said, sincere and steady. "The new dinosaur is really beautiful, but Rex is still number one. Rex is family. No one can replace family." Dominic watched the boy hold the frayed old dinosaur with unconditional love, and he understood. He understood better than anyone that some things could not be replaced, no matter how new, no matter how perfect the replacement looked. Then he turned to Lily and took a small black velvet box from his pocket. He did not speak. He only placed it in her hand. Lily stared at the box, surprised, then looked at Dominic. Slowly she opened it, and inside lay a simple, delicate silver bracelet with a small star charm. Not diamonds, not gold, not anything lavish or showy, only silver, but beautiful in a quiet, meaningful way. "I picked it myself," Dominic said, a little awkward, as if he was not used to giving anyone gifts. "I don't know if you'll like it." Lily looked at the bracelet, and suddenly her eyes burned. She could not remember the last time anyone had given her a gift. Maybe her 12th birthday, before her parents died. 15 years. 15 years without a present from anyone, except fists and insults from Ryan. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick. "I love it." She slipped the bracelet onto her wrist, and it fit as if it had been made just for her. Noah watched the adults, then ran off to fetch something from his room. He returned with a folded piece of paper and held it out to Dominic with a serious face. "This is my present for you," Noah said. "I don't have money to buy a gift, so I drew one. Lily says a handmade gift is the best gift." Dominic took the paper and opened it slowly, and he went still. It was a crayon drawing, messy in the way of a 5-year-old, but clear and full of meaning. It showed 3 people holding hands in front of a big house, a tall man in black, a woman with brown hair, and a small boy between them holding a dinosaur. Above them in a blue sky was a little angel with white wings and blonde hair, smiling down. "This is you," Noah said, pointing at the man. "This is Lily. This is me. And this," he pointed to the angel, his voice gentle, "is Sophia. She's in heaven, but she's still our family. She's watching us and smiling." Dominic stared at the picture and could not speak. He stared at the child scribbled Sophia, the small angel with a bright smile, and something inside him broke completely. 15 years without crying. 15 years building walls around his heart so no one could touch it. But now, looking at a drawing from a 5-year-old boy, those walls fell. His eyes filled. For the first time in 15 years. "Do you like it?" Noah asked anxiously when Dominic stayed silent too long. "I drew you smiling because you look better when you smile. You don't smile much." Dominic did not answer with words. He set the drawing down, then pulled Noah into his arms and held him tight. Noah froze in surprise for a second, then hugged back, small arms looped around the man's neck. "This is the most beautiful gift I've ever received," Dominic said, his voice rough and broken. "Thank you, son." Lily sat there watching them embrace in front of the Christmas tree glowing with lights. Tears slid down her cheeks, but they were not tears of pain. They were tears of something warm, something she thought she would never have. She looked at Dominic, the cold man who had opened his heart. She looked at Noah, her little brother with his huge heart. And she understood that this was family. Not by blood, not perfect, but family. 2 days after Christmas, just when Lily thought life had finally given her a small pocket of peace, the darkness from her past came looking for her again. Ryan Mercer was not the kind of man who let go easily. After the night Dominic drove him off in humiliation, he spent an entire week planning, because he knew he could not confront the most powerful mafia boss in New York head-on. That would be the same as suicide, but Ryan had money, connections, and the limitless cruelty of someone who could not bear to lose what he considered his property. He hired the best private investigator in the city and paid a huge sum to find out where Lily was, and it took only 3 days for the answer to come back: Dominic Corsetti's penthouse on the Upper East Side. Ryan smiled when he got the information. He could not use brute force to take Lily back, but he could use the law, because no matter how much power Dominic held in the underworld, he could not openly stand against the police and the legal system. Ryan drafted a complaint, attached photographs the investigator had taken from a distance showing Lily and Noah living in Dominic's penthouse, and sent it to the police with carefully calculated lies. He accused Dominic Corsetti of kidnapping his wife and his wife's younger brother, claimed Lily had been brainwashed, held against her will, forced to stay, and most importantly, he demanded custody of Noah, because Noah was not Lily's biological child, only her half-brother through their father, and on paper Lily had never officially been granted legal guardianship. Ryan knew that was the fatal weakness. That morning Lily was in the living room watching Noah play with Rex and the new dinosaur, when Marco walked in with a grave look, went straight to Dominic's office, and a few minutes later Dominic came out. His face showed nothing unusual, but in these days Lily had learned how to read him. The tension set in his jaw, the cold sharpened in his gray eyes. Something was wrong. "What is it?" she asked, instinct lifting her to her feet as she pulled Noah closer. Dominic looked at her, then at Noah, and spoke bluntly. "Ryan filed a report with the police. He's accusing me of kidnapping you and your brother. He's demanding custody of Noah." The blood drained from Lily's face. It felt as if someone had driven a fist into her stomach and stolen her breath. No, it could not be like this. She had run, she had fought, she had done everything to protect Noah. She could not let Ryan take him away. "They're going to separate Noah from me," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't have official guardianship papers. Ryan has money, lawyers. They'll believe him. They'll take Noah." Panic rose in her, breath coming too fast, eyes burning red, and Noah looked up at her with worry, not understanding what was happening but feeling the fear in her body. "Lily," he said softly, gripping her hand. "What's wrong?" Dominic stepped in close, set both hands on her shoulders, and made her meet his eyes. "Lily." His voice was low and certain. "Look at me. Breathe." She tried, staring at him through tears and helplessness. "You don't understand. Ryan won't stop. He'll take Noah. No one is taking Noah from you," Dominic cut in, his voice like steel. "I promise. But the police are coming," Marco said from the doorway, phone in hand. "They'll be here in a few minutes, boss. There's an order to investigate." Lily felt her knees threaten to give way. This was a nightmare. Everything she had begun to build in these days. The feeling of safety, of being protected, of having something like a family, all of it about to collapse. But Dominic did not panic. He was calm in a way that felt almost unreal, as if this were nothing more than an ordinary business meeting. "Let them come," he told Marco. "Call Daniel Kessler. Tell him to get here immediately." Then he turned back to Lily, his voice softer but still unshakable. "Listen to me. No matter what happens, you do not get scared. You did nothing wrong. You are the victim, not the criminal. And I will not let anyone take Noah. Do you understand?" Lily searched his gray eyes for a lie or a flicker of doubt and found only resolve, and she nodded even as the fear stayed lodged inside her. Noah clung to her leg, face pressed into her pants. "I don't want to go anywhere," he said, his voice trembling. "I want to stay here, with Lily, with Mr. Dominic." Dominic looked down at the boy, and for a moment the hardness in his face eased. He knelt, set a hand on Noah's head. "No one is taking you anywhere," he said. "I promise." The doorbell rang, echoing through the penthouse like the first crack of thunder before a storm. Marco checked the security camera. "Police. 3 of them. And there's Child Protective Services." Dominic rose, adjusted his suit jacket, and his face settled back into its familiar cold control. He looked at Lily one last time. "Get ready. And remember what I said. Don't be afraid." The door opened, and 3 people stepped inside. 2 uniformed police officers with stern, suspicious faces, followed by a middle-aged woman in a gray suit wearing the badge of Child Protective Services. They took in the penthouse's luxury, then looked at Dominic as if they were looking at a dangerous criminal, and given what they knew about him, perhaps they were right. "Mr. Dominic Corsetti?" the lead officer asked, his voice rigid. "We received a report alleging kidnapping and unlawful confinement. We need to ask you and the involved parties some questions." Dominic nodded, his expression unchanged. "Please come in. I'll cooperate fully." They separated everyone. Dominic was escorted into his office for a private interview, where he sat across from the officer and answered each question calmly and precisely. He knew the law like the back of his hand, knew what to say and what not to say. He did not lose his composure, did not reveal a single weakness. Lily was brought into the living room, seated across from the other officer and the Child Protective Services worker. They asked the questions she had expected. "Are you being forced to stay here? Has he threatened you? Do you want to leave? Do you need protection?" Lily shook her head at each one, trying to keep her voice steady even as her heart pounded like a drum. "I'm here voluntarily. Mr. Corsetti helped me escape an abusive husband. He has not harmed me or my little brother." But the police did not believe her. They looked at her with suspicion, as if she were a brainwashed victim reciting a kidnapper's script. "We need to speak to the boy," the Child Protective Services worker said. "Alone." Lily went rigid. "No, please don't. He's little. He'll be scared." But they did not listen. The woman walked over to Noah, who was curled on the sofa clutching Rex. She bent down and spoke in a falsely sweet voice. "Hey, sweetheart, come with me. I just want to ask you a few questions." Noah shook his head, fear filling his eyes. "No, I want to stay with Lily. It's only a few questions. Come on." The woman took Noah's hand and gently but firmly pulled him to his feet, and that was when Noah began to cry. "No, I don't want to go. Lily, Mr. Dominic." The boy screamed, his voice raw with panic and desperation. "Mr. Dominic, Mr. Dominic." Noah's cries echoed through the penthouse, cutting through the office door, and inside, Dominic went still. He heard the boy calling, heard that painful crying, and something in him detonated. He sprang to his feet, shoved the chair back, and moved to rush out. The officer stood to block him. "Mr. Corsetti, sit down." But Dominic did not listen. He walked toward the door, gray eyes lit with something dangerous. He did not care about the police, did not care about consequences. The boy was crying. The boy was calling him, and he would not sit still while someone frightened him. Marco caught him at the doorway, both hands on Dominic's chest, forcing him back. "Boss," he said, voice low and urgent. "Stay calm. Don't give them an excuse. If you do anything right now, they'll arrest you immediately, and she and the boy won't have anyone left to protect them." Dominic stood there, every muscle drawn tight as wire, his jaw clenched hard enough. Lily imagined she could hear his teeth grind, but he stopped, because he knew Marco was right. Out in the living room, the officer turned to Lily with a serious expression. "Miss Hartwell, if you truly are here voluntarily, you need to provide evidence. Mr. Mercer's report is very detailed. He claims you're being held against your will, that you've been threatened. Without evidence to the contrary, we will have to take you and the boy in for further investigation." Lily trembled, hands clenched together. She could hear Noah crying, could hear him calling her name and Dominic's, and it felt like her heart was being torn apart. She looked toward the office, and through the crack of the partially open door she saw Dominic standing there, gray eyes locked on hers, and he gave a small nod, just a slight nod, but Lily understood. He was telling her to be strong, telling her she could do this, telling her he believed her. She took a deep breath. She had been running for 3 months, afraid for 5 years, silent, enduring, letting Ryan control her life, but not anymore. She had to stand up now. For Noah, for herself, for everything she had lost and everything she was still trying to protect. Lily lifted her head and looked straight into the officer's eyes. "I have something I need to report," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "About Ryan Mercer." Lily began to speak, word by word, detail by detail, memory by painful memory she had tried to bury for years. She told them about 5 years in hell with Ryan Mercer, about the first time he hit her, just because she came home 15 minutes late, about the beatings after that, growing more brutal, more frequent, about nights when she curled on a cold floor and did not dare cry because she was afraid he would hear and hit her again. She told them about the hospital visits, 4 times in 5 years. And every time it was the same story. She fell down the stairs. She slipped in the shower. She crashed her bike, and she lied to the doctor, lied to the nurses, lied to herself, because Ryan was always right there beside her, smiling at the medical staff while his hand crushed her wrist under the blanket, reminding her what would happen if she told the truth. Then she spoke about Noah, and her voice caught when she said his name. The only child she had in this world, the child she had sworn to protect at any cost. Ryan started hitting my brother 6 months ago, she said, tears sliding down her cheeks. He's 5. He didn't do anything wrong. He spilled a glass of water on the table. She turned to the Child Protective Services worker, her voice trembling but unbreakable. My brother has a scar on his back, on the left, near the shoulder blade. It's a long straight line. Ryan used a leather belt. The metal buckle tore his skin. He's 5. The room went quiet. The officer and the woman looked at each other, the initial doubt giving way to something heavier and more serious. Lily stood and went to the small bag she had carried when she ran. She pulled out a crumpled stack of papers, hospital records she had secretly kept for years, hidden at the bottom of old clothing Ryan never bothered to look through. This is proof, she said, setting them on the table in front of the officer. Hospital records, 4 admissions, broken ribs, internal bruising, head trauma, all recorded as accidents. But you can check. Those injuries aren't from accidents. They're from being beaten. Then she did something she had never done in front of anyone. She pushed up her sleeve, revealing old scars along her arm, pale white lines crossing and crossing like a map of 5 years in hell. She turned her back, lifted her shirt slightly, and showed the long scar on her back where Ryan had smashed a liquor bottle into her when she tried to protect Noah. This is the truth, she said, and her voice was not shaking anymore. I wasn't kidnapped. I'm being protected. Mr. Corsetti is the only person who helped me when no one else did. And Ryan Mercer, the man who filed that report, is the one who turned my life into hell for 5 years. The officer studied the records, studied the scars, then looked at Lily with eyes that had completely changed. He nodded to the Child Protective Services worker, signaling her to bring Noah back. The moment the boy was released, he ran straight to Lily, threw himself into her arms, and clung as if he were terrified someone might take him again. Lily, he sobbed. I was so scared. I know, sweetheart, Lily whispered, kissing the top of his head. I know. But it's okay now. Everything is going to be okay. Dominic stood in the doorway of his office, watching. He had heard all of it, every word Lily said, every detail she forced herself to relive, and for the first time he did not see a trembling victim. He saw a brave woman who had stood up to the ghosts of her past to protect her brother. We will be opening an investigation into Mr. Ryan Mercer, the officer said, voice firm. Based on this evidence, it appears he made a false report. Miss Hartwell, we will contact you again within the next few days. When the police and the Child Protective Services worker left, the penthouse fell into silence. Lily stayed on the floor with Noah in her arms, and suddenly she felt all her strength drain out of her body. She had done it. She had stood up. She had spoken the truth she had hidden for 5 years, and it had wrung her out down to the last drop. She folded forward, forehead against Noah's shoulder, tears spilling without control. Not tears of misery, but tears of relief, of a weight finally set down. Dominic came to her without a word. He stood there for a moment, then slowly set his hand on her shoulder, warm and steady, not demanding, not forcing, simply there. The first time he had touched her, and the first time Lily did not flinch away. Right after the police left, Dominic walked into his office and shut the door. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he knew too well. After the second ring, someone answered. Daniel, Dominic said, his voice cold and decisive. I need you here now. It's urgent. Daniel Kessler, the best attorney in New York, the man who had handled every legal problem for the Corsetti family for 20 years, did not ask a single extra question. He only said, 20 minutes, and hung up. Exactly 20 minutes later, Daniel arrived at the penthouse. He was a man in his 40s, salt and pepper hair slicked neatly back, sharp eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses. He wore an expensive gray suit, carried a leather briefcase, and moved with brisk, confident purpose, as if he owned the world. Dominic was waiting in the office. He gave Daniel everything he knew about Lily, about Ryan, about what had just happened. He explained it briefly but completely, leaving out nothing that mattered. Daniel listened, took notes, and nodded now and then. "I need her to win," Dominic said when he finished, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. "No matter what it takes." Daniel looked up at Dominic with a flicker of curiosity. In 20 years working for the Corsetti family, he had never seen Dominic care about someone like this. But he did not ask. He only nodded. "Understood. I'll prepare a case against Ryan Mercer for domestic abuse. With the evidence she has, we can pursue a permanent restraining order. I will also work with the court on custody for Noah. She is the boy's only family, and with Ryan's history of violence, there is no reason any judge would grant him custody." Dominic nodded. "Do it, as fast as you can." After Daniel left, Dominic called Marco in. He sat back in his chair, gray eyes cold and calculating. "I want everything on Ryan Mercer," he said. "Everything. Work, money, relationships, whatever secrets he's hiding. All of it." Marco nodded without asking why. He knew when Dominic gave an order like that, it meant someone was about to have a very bad time. Within 3 days, Marco had a full file, and what he found was worse than Dominic expected. Ryan Mercer was not only a man who beat his wife, he was tied to financial fraud, laundering money through shell companies, and small-scale trafficking of illegal substances. He had hidden it for years, using a handsome face and social standing to cover the rot underneath. Dominic read the documents, and a thin, cold smile passed over his mouth. He did not need to handle Ryan with his own hands. He only needed these secrets to fall into the right hands at the right time. An anonymous call to the tax authorities, an anonymous email to narcotics investigators, a few documents forwarded to journalists who specialized in corruption. All of it clean. Not a trace leading back to Dominic or the Corsetti family. He had done this too many times to not know how to erase every path. Marco stood beside him, watching with an unreadable expression. Then he asked quietly, "Boss, why do you care about her like this? This isn't your style." Dominic did not answer. He rose and walked to the office door, looking toward the living room. Lily was sitting on the sofa, Noah curled against her, his head on her lap. The boy was telling her something, hands moving, mouth chattering, and Lily listened with a gentle smile. The Christmas lights still shimmered on the tree, bathing them in warmth. Dominic stood there, staring at that scene, and wondered when this home had stopped feeling cold, when he had started wanting to come back, when the boy's laughter and the woman's smile had become something he wanted to protect. He had no answer, or maybe he did, but he was not ready to admit it yet. A week later, Dominic's phone buzzed. He read Marco's message and a brief smile touched his lips. Ryan Mercer had been arrested. The tax authorities had uncovered millions of dollars in fraud. Police found illegal substances in his apartment during a search. He was facing years in prison, and no amount of bail money could save him. Dominic set the phone down and stared out the window as snow drifted softly. Ryan Mercer would not trouble Lily and Noah again, not ever. 1 week later, it was over. Ryan Mercer was sentenced to 7 years in prison for financial fraud and possession of illegal substances. The domestic abuse case was still under investigation, but with the evidence Lily had provided, he could be facing many more years behind bars. The court officially granted Lily legal guardianship of Noah, recognizing her as the boy's only lawful next of kin and the most suitable person to care for him. For the first time in her life, Lily was free. No more Ryan, no more fear, no more checking over her shoulder every time she stepped outside, no more jolting awake in the night from the nightmare that he would find her. She should have felt joy. She should have celebrated. She should have felt as if she had been born again. But when Dominic called her into his office that afternoon, something strange began to spread through her chest. He stood by the window as he always did, his back to her, and on the desk lay a thick brown envelope. "Sit," he said, his voice even and emotionless. Lily sat down, eyes fixed on the envelope with a worry she could not explain. Dominic turned, picked it up, and placed it in her hands. "Everything you need to start over," he said. "Inside is the key to a new apartment in Brooklyn. It's safe, a good neighborhood, close to a school for Noah. There's enough money for you to live comfortably for a few years until you find stable work. New identification papers for you and Noah, clean and legal." He paused for a second, then added, his voice rougher, "You're free now, Lily. Ryan is no longer a threat. You can start over and live the life you deserve." Lily stared down at the envelope in her hands, heavy and full. Inside was the future she had dreamed of for 5 years. Freedom, safety, a new life. She should have been happy. She should have thanked him. She should have stood up, taken Noah, and walked out of this penthouse without looking back. But why did her chest ache like this? Why did her eyes sting? Why did the thought of leaving this place make her want to cry? She looked up at Dominic. He stood there with the same cold face she had seen the first night she met him in that dark alley, as if the past 2 weeks had never happened, as if the breakfasts together, the nights of talking until morning, the moments by the Christmas tree, had all been a dream, as if she and Noah had only been passing guests, and now it was time to go. "Thank you," Lily said, her voice thick. "Thank you for everything you've done. I don't know how I could ever repay you." "You don't need to repay anything," Dominic replied, turning away to the window. "You only need to live well." Lily rose, her legs feeling as if stones were tied to them, and walked out of the office toward the living room where Noah was playing with Rex. He looked up when he saw her, his smile fading as he noticed her expression. "Lily," he asked anxiously, "what's wrong? Why do you look sad?" Lily knelt, forcing herself to smile. "It's nothing, sweetheart. I'm just thinking about a few things." Noah's eyes went to the envelope in her hand, then swept the penthouse, and understanding slowly gathered in his face. "Where are we going, Lily?" he asked, his voice getting smaller. "Do we have to leave here?" Lily could not answer. She only looked at him as his eyes began to redden. "I don't want to go," Noah said, his voice trembling. "I like it here. I like Mr. Dominic. I don't want to go anywhere." He hugged Rex tight to his chest as if he were afraid someone might rip everything away. Lily looked at him, then down at the envelope in her hand. She held it but did not open it. She stood, turned back to the office, and when she stepped inside, Dominic was still at the window with his back to her. "Mr. Corsetti," she called, her voice soft as breath. He did not turn, but she knew he was listening. Lily drew in a deep breath, then asked the question she knew would change everything. "Do you want us to leave?" Dominic stood as if turned to stone when he heard her question. He did not turn, did not look at her, only stared out at the city as the lights slowly began to come on in the dusk. Lily's words echoed in his head, simple, yet heavy enough to steal his breath. Did he want them to leave? He should have said yes. He should have told her to go. His world was not meant for the innocent, not for her and Noah. He was the Mafia. He was darkness. He was blood and sin. Beside him, they would be in danger. Enemies would come looking for ways to strike him through them. There would be nights he came home with blood on his hands. There would be secrets he could never tell. She deserved more than this. She deserved an ordinary, safe life, with an ordinary man who could love her in an ordinary way, not with a Mafia boss who did not even know what love was. He should have told her to go. But when he turned and met her eyes, those words died in his throat. Lily stood there, fragile yet unbreakable, brown eyes looking at him with something he did not dare name. She was not afraid of him. After everything she had seen, after everything she knew about him, she was still here, asking whether he wanted her to stay. "How am I supposed to thank you?" Lily asked, her voice soft as breath. "You saved us. You gave us a home, a safe place. You did things no one has ever done for me." Dominic shook his head. "You don't owe me anything." "It isn't about owing," Lily said, stepping one pace closer. "You gave us a family, even if it was only 2 weeks. Those were the happiest 2 weeks of my life." Noah laughed more. "I slept better. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone." She stopped, her eyes shining. "And I think you didn't either." Dominic said nothing. He could not. Because she was right. He had lived alone in this penthouse for years, without feeling, without connection, with nothing but darkness and emptiness. And then she and Noah arrived, and everything changed. He began to want to come home. He began to want to hear the boys' laughter. He began to want to see her smile. "If you want," he heard himself say, his voice rough. "It doesn't have to be temporary." Lily went still. She stared at him, eyes wide, as if she could not believe what she had just heard. "What are you saying?" Dominic drew a deep breath. This was something he had never done, never admitted, never let show. But seeing her standing there with an envelope holding a new life in her hands, and still asking him if he wanted her to go, he knew he could not pretend anymore. "I don't know what love is," he said, each word dragged up from deep in his chest. "I don't know how to be a father. I don't know how to be a husband. I grew up in darkness, in blood, in sin. That's all I know." He paused, looking straight into her eyes. "But with you and Noah, I want to learn. I want to try. I want to become the man you and Noah deserve, even if I don't know whether I can." Lily looked at him, and tears began to slide down her cheeks. But they were not tears of pain. They were something else, something warm and gentle. "I don't know what love is either," she whispered. 5 years with Ryan, I thought that was love, but it was only control and violence. I don't know what it feels like to be loved, to be valued, to be protected without paying for it with pain." She stepped closer until she was standing right in front of him, lifting her face to his gray eyes. "But I want to try. With you. If you'll give me a chance." Dominic lifted his hand and wiped the tears from her cheek. So gentle it was, as if he feared she might break. He did not speak, only looked at her with eyes that were no longer cold. Small footsteps sounded outside the door, and then Noah appeared, big eyes taking in the two adults standing so close together. He froze for a second, trying to understand what was happening, and then his face lit up. "We're staying?" he asked, hope pouring into his voice. "Staying with Mr. Dominic. We don't have to go anywhere." The boy ran in and hugged them both, one arm around Lily's leg, one around Dominic's. "I want to stay. I like it here. We're family, right?" Lily looked down at her little brother, then up at Dominic, and she nodded. Dominic looked at the child clinging to him, the child who had called him family, who had drawn him into a picture with Angel Sophia, and he nodded too. A year passed. 12 months since that fateful Christmas night in the dark alley in Lower Manhattan. 12 months since a 5-year-old boy asked a Mafia boss if he was lost, and everything had changed. The penthouse was no longer the cold, empty place it used to be. The walls that had once been nothing but white and gray were now decorated with Noah's messy, bright drawings, pictures of dinosaurs, of family, of Angel Sophia in the sky, of everything a 6-year-old imagination could dream up. And Dominic had each one framed and hung like priceless works of art. Out on the balcony, Lily had filled the space with plants and flowers, pots of roses, daisies, and even a small lemon tree. Noah insisted on planting so they could have lemons for lemonade in the summer, and the balcony that once felt bare and lifeless now overflowed with green and living color. Noah's toys lay scattered everywhere in the penthouse, toy cars under the sofa, storybooks on the coffee table, an unfinished puzzle spread across the living room floor, and Dominic always pretended to be annoyed when he tripped over a toy, but he never cleaned them up, never told Noah to put them away, because every stray toy was proof he was not living alone anymore. Dominic was still the boss of the Corsetti family. He still ran his empire, still made decisions, still faced enemies, but he had changed, and the people who worked for him saw it. He was less ruthless, less cold, and his rule was clearer than ever. No one touched women and children, never, not under any circumstances, and anyone who broke that rule would face him, and no one wanted that. Marco told the others the boss had found his soul again. Lily had begun to write. After so many years living in fear and silence, she had finally found her voice. She wrote children's books, stories full of color and hope. Her first book was about a brave boy who walked into a dark forest to find the monster everyone feared. But when the boy found the monster, he realized it was not scary at all. It was only lonely, and the boy stayed, became the monster's friend, and taught it how to laugh again. No one knew that story was drawn from real life. One autumn afternoon, when Dominic came home after a long day, Noah ran to greet him like always. The boy leapt up, demanding to be carried, and Dominic lifted him easily, as he had done hundreds of times over the past year. "Dad's home!" Noah shouted, arms tight around Dominic's neck. "Dad, today I drew the prettiest picture." Dominic went still. "Dad." The boy had just called him Dad, not Mr. Dominic like before, but Dad. And Noah did not seem to notice the shock at all, chattering on about his picture, about school, about Rex and the new dinosaur, until he noticed Dominic was not responding and stopped, looking up with worried eyes. "You don't like it?" Noah asked, his voice smaller. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Dominic did not let him finish. He knelt, set Noah down in front of him, and pulled him into a tight embrace. "I like it," he said, his voice thick. "I like it so much." Noah hugged him back, grinning. "So I can call you Dad, yes, forever?" "Forever," Dominic whispered. Sophia's room was no longer locked. Dominic had opened the door and let the light back in, let life return. Now it was Noah's reading room. Sophia's fairy tale books still sat on the shelves, but beside them were new books Noah loved. The small bed with butterfly sheets was still there, but Noah had added a dinosaur blanket. Sophia's white teddy bear still sat on the shelf, but beside it now was Rex, That night, when Dominic passed by the reading room, he saw Noah stretched out on Sophia's old bed, reading a fairy tale in a bubbling voice. The boy could not read many words, but he made up the story from the pictures, and Dominic leaned on the doorframe watching the child he now called his son. He looked at the room that had once been where pain was sealed away and saw it filled with laughter, and he whispered, so softly only he and the walls could hear, "Do you see, Sophia? I'm not alone anymore. On Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year since that fateful meeting in the dark alley of Lower Manhattan. Exactly 1 year since a 5-year-old boy asked a Mafia boss if he was lost. The penthouse that once felt cold as a tomb now overflowed with laughter, lights, and the warmth of a real family. The dining table was set with care, laid out with traditional Christmas dishes. Dominic seated at the head, Lily beside him, and Noah across the table with eyes shining with excitement. Marco was there too, the man who had once known only guns and shadows now wearing a gentle smile as he listened to Noah talk. Missus Rosa was there as well, the kind neighbor from the floor below who had helped Lily look after Noah when she was busy writing and Dominic was working, invited because Noah insisted that Mrs. Rosa was family too and no one should eat Christmas alone. Dinner unfolded in laughter and stories, Noah talking about school, about friends, about the drawings he made, Lily sharing about the new book she was writing, Marco telling funny stories from his younger days in a way no one would have believed he could, and Dominic, the man who once did not know how to smile, sitting there now with a faint curve on his mouth, listening to it all. When dinner ended, Noah ran off to fetch something from his room and came back holding a large sheet of paper, eyes bright. "I have a present for everyone," he announced. "I drew it all week." He lifted the picture, the biggest drawing Noah had ever made, bursting with color and detail. 4 people stood holding hands in front of a big house, with a tall Christmas tree beside it. Dominic, Lily, Noah, and one more person, Noah explained, was Uncle Marco, because Uncle Marco was family too, and above them in a blue sky with white snowflakes was a little angel with white wings and blonde hair, smiling down. "This is Sophia," Noah said, pointing to the angel, his voice gentle. "She's family too. She's always here, watching us from heaven. I want her to know she isn't forgotten. She'll always be part of this family." The room went silent. Lily lifted a hand to her mouth, eyes blurred with tears. Marco cleared his throat and turned away. Mrs. Rosa dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief, and Dominic only stared at the drawing with shining eyes, unable to speak. The night grew late. Mrs. Rosa and Marco went home. Noah fell asleep in his room, clutching Rex and Sophia's white teddy bear that he had asked to keep. Dominic led Lily out to the balcony where snow drifted down softly like white petals. New York glittered below them, millions of lights shimmering like a sea of stars. They stood side by side in silence, their breath turning to pale smoke in the cold air. Then Dominic turned to Lily and took her hand. He did not kneel. That was not his style. But he looked straight into her eyes with a sincerity he had never shown anyone. "I don't deserve you," he said, his voice low and rough. "My past is soaked in blood. My present is dangerous. My future isn't certain. I'm Mafia. I'm darkness. I'm everything you should run from." He paused and tightened his grip on her hand. "But if you still want me, I'll spend my whole life earning you. I'll learn how to love. I'll learn how to be a husband, how to be a father. I'll protect you and Noah with everything I have." Lily looked at him, the man the world called a monster. But to her he was only someone who had been lost for too long and had finally found his way home. "I don't need you to be perfect," she said, gentle but sure. "I don't need you to change into someone else. I only need you, exactly as you are, with all the darkness, all the scars, all the imperfect parts, because you accepted me with all my wounds." He pulled her into his arms and held her tight beneath the falling snow. They stood there, 2 figures on the highest balcony in the city, snow whitening their shoulders, yet their hearts warmer than ever. Somewhere inside the penthouse, Noah's voice drifted through his sleep, small and sweet. "Merry Christmas, Sophia. I love you." Dominic heard it and smiled. He held Lily's hand and whispered into her ear, "Thank you for finding me." Lily rested her head on his shoulder and smiled. "No, thank Noah." He asked the right question. "Are you lost too, mister?" He was not a bad man, only a man who had been lost for too long, and who had finally found the way home. The story ends here, but its message will keep echoing in our hearts. This story teaches us that no matter who you are, no matter how dark your past has been, there is always a chance to change, to be loved, to find family. Sometimes salvation comes from the least expected places, from an innocent question asked by a child, from the trust of a brave woman, from a pure love that asks for nothing in return. The story also reminds us that family does not have to be bound by blood. Family is the people who choose to stay, choose to love, choose to protect one another no matter what. And most of all, it shows that it is never too late to heal, never too late to begin again, never too late to open your heart and let happiness in. Thank you for following this story all the way to the end. If this story touched your heart, please hit the like button and share this video with the people you love. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the emotional stories we bring you every day. We would truly love to hear how you felt about it. What did this story mean to you? Was there a moment that made you cry? Have you ever met someone like Dominic, someone who seemed cold but carried a warm heart inside? Or have you ever been like Lily, fighting through darkness to protect the one you love? Share your thoughts and your story in the comments below. We read every comment, and we cherish every honest word from the heart. Finally, we wish all of you watching this video good health, a joyful life, peace, and happiness every day. No matter how hard life gets, remember there is always light at the end of the tunnel. There is always someone ready to take your hand, and you deserve to be loved. Goodbye, and see you in the next video.